everyone. Today we are going to be talking about testing. To be specific, software testing. During the development of a software, we have to go through a process of testing in order to check if the user requirements are valid. Today we will be checking the testing methods that is done during the developmental process, and also we will be checking the functional and the non-functional testing. We are also going to be discussing about the testing methods such as black box and white box testing, and also, since we are learning about Python, we are going to give an example of unit testing that is done in Python. A small example will give you a brief understanding of how unit testing is done. Today, let's look into the definition of what a software testing is. Testing is done in order to check the execution of a software for the purpose of verification and validation. And also, we need to verify if the software is done, verify the software process in order to check if it is built in the right way. So now let's look at the various testing that is done during the software developmental process. So today we are going to look into the various processes that we do while we develop the software. In other words, testing that is done during the software development. So we have the functional testing, so when we look into the functions of a software, basically the specifications a user has given the developer in order to build the software. So during the functional testing, we check if the functions of that particular software is correct. For example, if the buttons are working properly. The second, we have the non-functional testing. In the non-functional testing, we do check the system's reliability and the performance itself. Like for instance, say you have developed a software in order to a bank account, where you're going to transfer funding from account A to account B. So in that particular case, if the specified amount is not transferred properly, so that particular software system is not reliable. And also, when you consider the performance, if it takes like one whole day for for the process to be transferred or for the web page to load, that again is not a very good software. So these things are checked in the functional and non-functional testing of the softwares. So now let's look into the other testing methods such as black box and white box testing. So let's look into the black box testing. So in a black box testing, imagine, let me write the name first. Imagine you have input and then you have output, and here you have the developed software application itself. So when it comes to black box testing, the user, or while testing the software itself, he or she does not know what happens inside. You're basically checking what the test cases with regard to the input to the output. For instance, you're not going to check the code, or you're not going to check if there is how many for loops, how many if-else statements. You're not going to check those things. You're just going to check, in other words, the functional. So whenever you give an input, if the output is just right, that's all you're going to check when it comes to black box testing. So now we're going to look into the white box testing. So imagine you have an input and then you have an output. The user does indeed know what happens inside the code. So in this particular testing, we are going to look into the logic itself. So if the if-else statements are like, properly introduced, or if they are doing what is expected, and the for loops. So basically in this particular testing, we are going to look into the logic itself. So now we are going to be looking at unit testing. Like I mentioned earlier, unit testing is where we check the code, we test it with a bunch of test cases, and we see if the output is what is actually what we want. So this is done through unit testing, and there is a separate video on an example of code which is written in Python itself. So please watch that video in order to get an understanding of how you can do unit testing in Python. I hope you all have an understanding of how testing is done in Python, and as well as the testing processes that is done during the development and after the development of the software. Thank you.